Although training camp starts in 2 months, that's still a lot of time for improvement. Welcome back to another video. Hopefully you're having a good Monday. Now, there's always a ton of debate between Blazer fans as to how good specific Blazers players are. It seems like we can never come to a consensus in regards to specific players, let alone their specific skills. So naturally, I'm going to talk about specific player skills that should be worked on by each Blazer and see what you guys think. Here is one skill each Blazer should work on between now and training camp. Let's start off with the rookies, and first up is Summer League standout and 57th overall pick, Jabari Walker. I think the number one priority for him between now and training camp should be his ball handling. Now, I already like him as a 3-and-D prospect. I think those skills are at a high enough level that he can come into an NBA game and provide both right away. The key for him is, can he be a guy that can handle the ball a little bit in transition, a little bit in the half court, and not get too sped up by the pace of the game. Jabari Walker wasn't a main ball handler at Colorado, and of course that's Pac-12 basketball, so the jump to the NBA is quite a big one. He did show some flashes of being able to create and handle the ball in Summer League that has me very encouraged and optimistic, but there was a couple times he seemed a little uneasy with the ball, and I think the first step into building towards his upside, which would be more than a 3-and-D guy and a guy that can create for himself and others, the first step for that is kind of honing his ball handling ability a little bit more. At the very least, I just want him to be comfortable and capable as a ball handler his rookie season. I don't expect him to wow anyone, but just as long as he's not getting himself into trouble dribbling the basketball. Next up is Shaden Sharpe, and he's recovering from that torn labrum, but it's said that he'll be ready before training camp. Now, the two skills I have for him aren't arm dependent or shoulder dependent. The number one thing I think he should work on is some of his first step in explosiveness. Now, I don't know how early he's going to be able to work on this with that injury, but this is leg work, so hopefully he can start working on that. And then once he's healthy enough, and this might be part of his rehab, but I think Shaden Sharpe needs to work on his ball handling as well. Now let's look at the second-year players. Greg Brown III, I think the number one thing he needs to work on is actually his best trait right now, and that is his defense. I think that really the only way Greg Brown III is providing positive value next year, if he has to play, is if he's a good defensive player. I don't really trust him offensively yet. He's obviously a great transition threat and lob target, but everything else is still a work in progress. And don't get me wrong, he needs to work on other things such as his three-point shooting and ball handling ability. However, I think his defense is furthest along, and he needs to become a positive player in an area, and that's the area where he has the best chance. Next up is Trendon Watford, Summer League Championship MVP. The main thing he needs to work on is shooting his threes faster. Watford wasn't the best three-point shooter coming out of college, and he struggled his rookie year, in a rookie year where he impressed everywhere else. And then in Summer League, he looked comfortable shooting the three ball and knocked down some threes when he had time to shoot. The problem is when he had to speed up a little bit or shoot off the dribble, he had a couple of air balls, and he just didn't look comfortable in those situations. So the key for Trendon Watford between now and October is to get comfortable shooting threes quicker, to speed up his shot a little bit more and be able to shoot threes faster. Keon Johnson's up next. The main thing I think he should work on is his point guard skills. He showcased some pretty consistent capabilities as a playmaker in Summer League, which has me encouraged. He is a point guard sized player that can play some too. However, with the Blazers having a lack of depth at the backup point guard spot, Brandon Williams is kind of their third string point guard, and he's a two-way player. If Dame or Ant got hurt, it'd be nice to have a guy in Keon Johnson who you could trust to play some point guard. Now, I think in that situation, you might see Josh Hart playing some backup point. However, it'd just be nice to have someone else you could trust there that's maybe a little bit better than a Brandon Williams, and that could be Keon Johnson. And then he provides the defensive ability and everything else on top of that. His shot's looking better, so he should just be working on his point guard skills, which would be his ball handling, some of his reads, and passing ability. Next up is Drew Eubanks. I think the number one thing he should be focusing on is his pick and roll defense. Now, some of this work might be film-based, studying areas in which he struggled last year. And the reason I singled out pick and roll defense is I don't think Drew Eubanks will ever be a positive rim protector as a center. I just don't think he has the athletic ability or the length or size to do so. But he is a pretty agile big, so So I think he has the potential to be a solid pick and roll defender. I don't think he was good in that area last year, but I think he has the potential to be better. So that is the number one thing he should work on. Next up is Justice Winslow. The number one thing he should work on is obvious. That's his three-point shooting. If he could shoot the ball better, I would be very comfortable having him in the rotation. However, given his lack of a three-point shot, I am not comfortable having him in the Portland Trail Blazers rotation. Offensively, I think he's a guy that you can sag off of to help onto other players, and you can live with Justice Winslow shooting threes. Despite people thinking that he played really well in a Blazer uniform last year, he still only shot 27% from three. If he could just be 33, 34%, that would be a huge improvement, and he might be respected at the three-point line. So he needs to continue to try and work on his shot. I'm not super confident that he's ever going to become a positive three-point shooter, but just get as close to average as possible. Other than that, he also needs to work on his finishing. Next up is Nassir Little. The number one thing I think Nas needs to work on is his off-ball defense. Nassir Little was a mess off the ball defensively last year, but he was really, really good on the ball. The Blazers need to become as good of a defensive team as possible. Nassir Little could be a huge part of that given his on-ball capabilities. However, that would require him cleaning up things off the ball. The secondary thing, I think Nassir Little needs to work on some shot creation as well. That's where his upside comes in terms of him being somebody that can create off the dribble with his athletic gifts and his length. Next up is MLE signing Gary Payton II, and he had a solid year shooting the three-point ball last year. However, I don't know how much stock to put into that. He should continue working on his three-point shot to hopefully carry over some of the success he had last year shooting the ball into this season. The knock on him early in his career was he wasn't a guy that could shoot the ball hardly at all. Last year, he was a very capable three-point shooter. Hopefully, he continues to work on that, and hopefully that continues. Next up is Josh Hart. The main thing he needs to work on is his three-point shot, getting that as consistent as possible. He shot the three ball well in a short stint in Portland last year. However, for his career, he's a slightly below average three-point shooter. That's a very obvious thing for Josh Hart to work on, as he's very capable in pretty much every other area. Next up is the Blazers' only trade acquisition this offseason. That is Jerami Grant. And Jerami Grant is looked at as a really good on-ball defender. I think he's a little bit overrated, though, because he really struggles getting through screens. Me and some friends of mine went back and looked at 4 full bubble games of Jerami Grant's when he was playing in Denver. That was a time where Grant was playing a role for the Nuggets, much like he'll play this year in Portland, and people were raving about his defense. The main takeaway I had from those 4 full games was Jerami Grant's just really bad getting through screens. He takes bad angles, doesn't set himself up to fight through screens, and a lot of his struggles getting through screens are just weird to me, because it's not that he's physically incapable of getting through screens better, he just doesn't get through screens well. So that is something for him to work on, and the secondary thing for him to work on is much the same, and that is his rebounding. He's physically capable of being a guy who gets 7 to 8 rebounds a game. He's athletic with long arms, but for whatever reason, he's a guy who just struggles to rebound the ball. In Grant's season with Denver, where he played 27 minutes per game, he only averaged 3.5 rebounds per game. In Detroit, where he was playing about 32 to 34 minutes a game, he was averaging 4 to 4.5 rebounds per game. That's just not good enough for your starting power forward and a guy who's physically capable of doing much, much better. In terms of Yousef Nurkic, he should also be working on his three-point shot. If he could be a consistent floor spacer, it would help open up the offense more for Damian Lillard, Anthony Simons, Jerami Grant, Josh Hart, Nassir Little, if he can become more of a shot creator, and so forth. He's shown some flashes of being able to knock down threes, they just haven't been consistent, and therefore he hasn't been a good enough three-point shooter to be respected and be considered a floor spacer. Given Josh Hart being a slightly below average shooter for his career, and Gary Payton II having some question marks in that area, Nassir Little hasn't proven he can shoot consistently. Justice Winslow, we know he struggles shooting the ball from the three-point arc. Spacing honestly might be a little bit of an issue next year, and it'd be nice if Nurkic could help out with that. Next up is Anthony Simons, the new starting shooting guard in Portland. The main thing I think he should be working on is his finishing ability. He's very quick and athletic, great vertical leap, really good touch as well. I think he could be a really crafty and good finisher around the rim, and he's shown some flashes of that. It just hasn't become consistent. Last year in his breakout season, Anthony shot the 3-ball well on all types of 3-point shots. I think he's one of the top 5 3-point shooters in the league, considering some of the types of threes he can hit. Improved his playmaking, improved his ball handling ability, and I expect that to continue. The one area I still think he struggled in last year was finishing around the rim consistently. So that should definitely be the main area of focus for him. And then other than that, I think he needs to continue to get stronger, and that'll help him out defensively. And last, but certainly not least, Damian Lillard, who is now healthy and hopefully ready to go for the entire season. The main thing he needs to work on is pretty obvious. That is his perimeter defense. A big part of that is getting better, getting through screens, like I said with Jerami Grant, and hopefully him being healthier and feeling better and being able to move easier will also help him out on the defensive end. If he could just be an average defender, that would go a long way in terms of helping the Blazers become an average defensive team. A secondary skill for Dame to work on, it's hard to find them because he's such a great player, but a secondary skill for him to work on is to get a little bit better throwing lobs. Anyway, that wraps up this video. Hopefully you enjoyed. I'll catch you later tonight for Blazers Uprise Live if you join us at 9:30 p.m. Pacific time. If you're not subscribed to our second streaming channel, which that'll be on, link is in the description box below. Eric will be back today. If not, I'll have the Trade Talk Tuesday tomorrow. So anyways, with that, I'm out of here. Until next time, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.